That was awkward.
Yes, it was.
What's good, everybody? This is your boy Jagging off the Go to Jags YouTube. 904 to Bowl City, Duval. We in the fucking building yet again. Okay, so a little bit of a different feel for this video. Now, I recently came across a tweet from an NFL rumor site, and it posed the question: who is the worst quarterback you have ever had on your team? Well, me being the extremist that I am, and the fact that awkward silence is on hiatus, and I'm kind of desperate for content right now with nothing but training camp news happening. I decided to take this a step further, and it made me think: is it possible that in the short history of the Jacksonville Jaguars, can I comprise a list of the 10 worst starting quarterbacks the Jacksonville Jaguars have ever had? And the answer is a resounding yes. There are 10 sacks of shit that were so bad they deserve their list. So what am I looking for? Well, you have to have more than one. You have to have more than one start. So, which means the Jacksonville Jaguars gave you multiple chances to start an NFL game, and you fucked it up. So, names like Jamie Martin, Trent Edwards, and Rob Johnson, they won't be included because they only started one game. And the ultimate worst quarterback I've ever seen play in the NFL in my entire life, Tanner Lee, he will not be included because as bad as he was, he never saw the field. And matter of fact, he barely made the team here and there. I think he only managed to crack the practice squad. But yeah, that guy was awful. And also, besides multiple starts, what goes into the list is your touchdown to interception ratio, how many games you won and lost, just your overall negative impact to the franchise. Now, I'm not going to include people on this list. The following ones I'm not going to include on this list: Mark Brunell and David Garrard, obviously because they were the two best ones and they belong nowhere near this list, and Trevor Lawrence because he's obviously been pretty good, and then and I can't really give him a final grade because he's only the second year into his tenure, and it's not over yet. So I would have to wait for it. I would have to wait for him to finish to see if he can somehow make this list. I really doubt it's ever going to happen, but just throwing that out there. Okay, before we start the actual list, I have 3 honorable mentions that just missed out on the list. The first 2 are going to surprise you because you're going to swear that they would make this list. Blake Bortles and Byron Leftwich. And I know some of you say, how the hell did they not make the list? Yeah, and yes, there are 10 quarterbacks worse than them. And then, of course, Gardner Minshew, who just missed out on the list. Gardner Minshew, champion of the Elder Gods. So there are reasons that I couldn't put them on here. And let's start with Bortles. Now, Bortles, we all know his time with the Jaguars was extremely up and down. But that being said, he did do a lot of good for the franchise. He actually holds a few passing records for the Jaguars, including the most touchdowns ever thrown in a single season with 35. And in the 2017 playoffs, I get it's mostly the defense. It was mostly the defense and Leonard Fournette that got us there, but Bortles definitely played his role very well on that team. Now, granted, his tenure was considered bad because no matter what happened, he never took that next step, and we ended up giving up on him. But as bad as he was at times, there was a lot of good he did for the franchise, and I will always appreciate Blake Bortles. Byron Leftwich is kind of the same thing. Now, this is actually going to shock you guys, but Byron Leftwich actually has a winning record as a Jaguar starting quarterback. He's one of the three that do. The others, of course, being Garrard and Burnell. And granted, he never had more than 20 touchdowns in a season, and I think injuries held him back a lot. But Byron definitely did have his moments. Just his shortcomings was obviously his health. He had a long-ass throwing motion, and then he, and I don't know, he just kind of had to give way to David Garrard because Garrard ended up being the truth. So, but, you know, I don't hate Byron. I wish it would have went better, but... And he did end up going to be a backup for a few other teams, and then, you know, he ended up being a pretty successful offensive coordinator and has a Super Bowl ring, so good on him. And Gardner Minshew, still to this day, has the best rookie season for the Jacksonville Jaguars ever. But there's a couple things that went wrong with him. One was obviously his physical limitations. He didn't have a very strong arm, and he kind of was set up even though this wasn't his own doing, he was kind of set up to fail. They basically threw him to the wolves, and he was either going to sink or swim, and obviously he didn't. And obviously, it didn't work out. He did have a lot of good moments, and he was a very fun player to watch. I'll always be a fan of him, and to be honest, well, I can't be a fan of him this year because he plays for the Indianapolis, but I really hope that towards the end of the year there's a quarterback-needy team that's like a contender that trades for him and gives him an actual shot with a decent team. So, like I said, I will always appreciate Gardner Minshew. So, those are the three honorable mentions. Now we get onto the actual list. And now, remember, this is my list, not your list. If you don't agree with it, you can do one of two things. You can either you can either do your own list, put it in the comment section, or make your own video, or shut up or I'll smack you one. So, let us begin. At number 10, we have Quinn Gray. Now, a lot of you may not remember Quinn Gray because this is back when Garrard was the quarterback, but he actually got it called into action quite a bit the year Leftwich left and Garrard became the full-time starter. This guy, I actually like this guy, and I'm honestly kind of surprised he didn't get a shot anywhere else. The guy saw action a bit, whether we were resting Garrard or whether he was injured. But the season he was Garrard's backup, he had 10 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, and I think threw for over 1,000 yards. So there's something to be said for that. The dude actually was a pretty solid backup. But, you know, obviously he couldn't get on the field enough to make an impact. He was definitely up there with some of the better backups we've ever had. So, like I said, I don't hate this guy. But unfortunately, he kind of gets the 10 spot by default just because, you know, he wasn't around long enough and didn't really get enough opportunity. But he was pretty much a legend in NFL Europe though. So there's that for him, and that's something I wish that was still around, NFL Europe, because, you know, with all this London playing bullshit, that actually could have been a good thing for minor league, like a good minor league thing for the NFL. But, you know, we don't have it anymore, and it's whatever. But yeah, number 10, Greg. Number 9, Chad Henne. Now, Chad had his moments. Like, I can really recall 2 very good games he had. Obviously one was that, and obviously one he didn't even start. He came in relief and against the Houston Texans one year, and actually his first year here, he came in against the Houston Texans and somehow threw 4 touchdowns, and that game's actually very sad to think about, just because, you know, Justin Blackman and Cecil Shorts both had career games, and we were thinking that, you know, we were set up as long as we got a quarterback, but Fortunately, Cecil Shorts kept getting concussions, and Justin Blackmon, well, I think we all know what happened there. And that's a video for another time, those two. But and then there was another time he brought the Jags back to beat Cleveland on a game-winning catch from Cecil Shorts. But other than that, I honestly cannot think of anything else good this guy did. He was basically he was first brought in to push Blaine Gabbert, and then he was kept around to be the bridge quarterback for Blake Bortles. Needless to say, he didn't do either one of those very well. He just was not good. He is a mid-tier backup at best for how his career went. He did have a pretty long career, though, and somehow he got a Super Bowl ring being Patrick Mahomes' backup. But other than that, he was kind of some shit here. Number 8, Luke McCown, a.k.a. the lesser-known McCown brother. Not much to say. The guy was here for, I think, a year. He was the bridge quarterback to Blaine Gabbert. I think he started like 3 games. He won one of them, and it was a game against the Titans where they were pretty shit too. So, I mean, not much to say there. Number 7, Cody Kessler. I know we all remember Cody Kessler. As crazy as this is, he actually went 2-2 as a starter. And I think it's the funniest shit ever that one of his wins is a 6-0 victory over an Andrew Luck Colts team that got completely shut out. That, unfortunately, is pretty much the legacy of Cody Kessler in Jacksonville. Because the next week, he played horrible against Trashville. And then I think the week after that, his only other win came when he started and Blake Bortles came on in relief and finished out the game to beat the Miami Dolphins. And I don't think anyone's ever heard from him since. He had a noodle arm. He even had a noodle arm in Cleveland, and it just was not good. So, yeah, not much to say there. Number 6, Steve Berline. Now, if you were to ask a casual NFL fan or a casual Jaguars fan even, who was the first starting quarterback of the Jacksonville Jaguars? 90% would probably say Mark Brunell, and that is not the correct answer. What is the correct answer? Our number 6 entrant, Steve Berline. Not much to say. This guy sucked here. He started a total of, 6 games, and he won one of them. He was pretty much there until Brunell took over. That's basically the summation of his career in Jacksonville. He did go on to have a pretty decent stint with the Panthers and then the Broncos, and had a nice lengthy career. But his time in Jacksonville, just some shit. Number 5, Jonathan fucking Quinn. Now, a lot of you are not going to remember this guy, but you want to know what his only win consisted of with the Jaguars? Take a guess. Okay, I'm going to tell you. This guy would be fucking winless as a starter if not for a game-winning interception that he threw. Yes, you heard that correctly. Let me explain. This asshole is driving the Jaguars for a game-winning drive against the Giants. He throws an ugly-ass interception, and a player for the Giants tackled the guy that made the interception. He fumbled in the end zone, and somebody from Jacksonville recovered it, and it was a touchdown. That is an actual play in the NFL. Go look it up. That is the highlight for Jonathan Quinn. If I was him, I would have sent those 2 Giants players, gift cards to whatever restaurant they wanted for that shit, because this guy would be winless if not for that. Other than that, complete and utter dog shit, whether he came on in relief or whether he had to start. And I think he only started 3 games. But I remember as a kid when Burnell was injured a couple times, I was like, can we just pump him up with painkillers and get him back in? This is very young jagging off saying this, by the way. So yeah, when your ultimate career highlight is an interception that ended up winning you a game, yeah, you know you were some trash. Okay. Number 4. Nick Foles. I know every Philly fan that watches my channel is going to fucking hate this, but sorry. I'm not grading him on what he did in Philadelphia. Like, that was cool and all, but when he was with the Jaguars, holy fucking shit, did he ever commit highway robbery on the front office? Now, I'll admit, signing Nick Foles at the time seemed like a pretty good idea to try and keep, the rest of the defense we had and, some of our weapons and just, try to get one last run out of them. At the time, it seemed like a good idea. I mean, and Nick Foles was the top free agent quarterback available, and excluding Kyler Murray because we knew he was going number 1 overall, look at the options we could have drafted for quarterback that year. Daniel Jones, Dwayne Haskins, Drew Lock, Will Grier. Yeah, I'm good. And this isn't a Colin Cowherd thing, but I do have to talk about the facts. And this isn't a knock on Dwayne Haskins. I really hope he's resting in peace, and condolences to his family. That was terrible what happened to him. But I got to talk the facts about this video. And what's crazy than that, we ended up taking Gardner Minshew in the 6th round, who was better than all of them. But yeah, like I said, at the time, it seemed like a pretty good idea. And I guess it wasn't all bad. We got Josh Allen out of that draft, and then we traded Nick Foles for a 4th-round pick, which ended up being Shaq Quarterman. We did get out of that contract. I think we only ate a total of $30 million from it, which, considering how much it was for, wasn't that bad. And the fact we got any type of draft pick out of that was truly amazing. But let's see how this started off. He threw a touchdown to DJ Chark on the 2nd drive of the game against the Chiefs and broke his clavicle. Little did we know that was going to be the high point of Nick Foles' run of him being the Jacksonville Jaguars quarterback. Came back against Indianapolis, started out okay, then it fell to shit. Then he played Trashville, then it fell to shit. Then he played Tampa in Jacksonville when people were openly chanting, "We want Minshew," and that was pretty much the end. So, yeah, I think really without Doug Peterson or away from Philadelphia, Nick Foles is completely fucking useless. And that's basically going to be his legacy. Number 3. Mike Glennon. Oh, we knew old giraffe-necked fuck would get on this list. If you couldn't tell from previous videos a few years ago, I fucking despised this man. He was atrocious. Like, it's bad when his 2 best touchdowns he threw on the year was a play where DJ Chark practically had to rip the ball away from a cornerback against the Bears. And in one of the strangest touchdowns I've ever seen in my life, it hit off somebody's head and went into another honorably mentioned bum Laviska Shenault's arms. Yeah, that was Mike Glennon's highlights. He did do what he was brought here to do, to be honest, to be fair to him. Because, as crazy as this sounds, you go back and look it up, Mike Glennon has actually started for 3 different teams that ended up with the number 1 overall pick. One was the Bucs when they drafted Jameis Winston. One was the Cardinals when they drafted Kyler Murray. And the other was the final one was the Jaguars when they drafted Trevor Lawrence. So, in a way, I kind of appreciate him for that. So my advice to any team out there that's in the market for a quarterback if you want to end up with the number 1 overall pick so you can take either Caleb Williams or Drake May, sign Mike Glennon and let him start some games. That'll get you there. It's actually a pretty amazing feat. But as far as his play on the field, God, it was awful. But in a weird way, I do appreciate it. Now, talking about that year, there actually happened to be a worse quarterback that started games for the Jaguars that ended up that year. And that would be our number 2 entrant, Jake Luton. God, this guy was useless. Like, I was infuriated watching this guy. I mean, my God, was he bad. He actually started off with a decent game against the Texans where he hit, like, Colin Johnson for, like, a bomb and then rushed for a touchdown. And, like, he did some good things. But I can remember the breaking point for me where it was pretty obvious this guy could just shove it and was just one of the biggest fucking disgraces I've ever seen in my life. We were playing the Packers in Lambeau, and our defense, which was historically bad and complete dog shit that year, actually played decent. Sidney Jones had an interception. C.J. Henderson forced a turnover. You know, Keelan Cole had a great game with a kick return, and then and somehow he caught a touchdown from Jake Luton. But this ass fuck was 18 of 35 with a pick. Nothing else needs to be said. That's when I pretty much knew that this guy is some shit. And if you really want to keep it real about that, the Jaguars had to be tanking that year because remember, Josh Dobbs just came over from Pittsburgh when we traded for him when Nick Foles got hurt to back up Minshew. And Josh Dobbs, especially based on what we saw in the Trashville game, there is no way you can convince me that Jake Luton and Mike Glennon were better options than Josh Dobbs. So, you know, I know it can't be proven, but I'm pretty sure Jacksonville knew what they were doing there. So, yeah, Jake Luton, and the other thing is, I don't know how the fuck this guy keeps getting jobs. Like, it's truly astounding. But I guess credit to him, he does, but God did he suck. And also, he's one of the 3 people I bitch about that whose draft pick could have been used on James Robinson. That way, he'd still be under his rookie contract, and he would still be here. But nope, the genius of Dave Caldwell, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, number 1. I think we all knew what's coming here. Blaine fucking Gabbert. I mean, if you really think about it, could this truly have been anybody else? Every negative adjective or descriptive or vicious word that could be used to describe Blaine Gabbert and his quarterback skill and what we saw as Jaguars fans, my God, was it bad. And I can pretty much say every vicious word describing him, and that could be a feasible explanation of why he was number 1. But for the sake of this video, let's dive deeper into it, shall we? As crazy as this seems, in 2011, there was actually a real debate of who was the better quarterback coming out of college. Blaine Gabbert or Cam Newton? Not quite the Peyton Manning and Ryan Leaf debate, but sort of similar. And unfortunately, the Jaguars got the Ryan Leaf end of the stick there. We took Blaine Gabbert 11th overall. And what's crazy about it is somehow he wasn't the worst quarterback in that draft class. Matter of fact, he wasn't even the second worst. Fucking Trashville took Jake Locker, and Minnesota took Christian Ponder, and they somehow were worse than Blaine Gabbert. Let that sink in. And he's not only the worst quarterback the Jaguars have ever had, he is the worst first-round draft pick, bar none, the Jacksonville Jaguars have ever taken. The worst quarterback I've ever seen in my life, and what really kick-started the dark ages, which was the 2010s for the Jaguars. I mean, where do I begin? Was scared of shit in the pocket, afraid to do anything, was a fucking pussy, always hurt. And when he was playing, it was just horrendous. Just an absolute disgrace of a quarterback. Funny enough, I believe I was actually at his first win as a starter. It was against the Baltimore Ravens on a Monday Night Football game. And he didn't throw a single touchdown. The Jaguars didn't score a touchdown at all. They just beat the Ravens to death with Josh Scobie field goals. Yeah, that happened. I'm trying to think of one even right now. Well, okay. His sophomore season, the one game he actually played good was against the Minnesota Vikings. But he did play against Christian Ponder, and he lost. So, God. Mercifully, it was only over after 3 years, but God did that set the franchise back a lot. And he was eventually traded to the San Francisco 49ers for a 6th-round pick. I think we robbed the shit out of them. So, but you know what's even crazier about that? You know what's really infuriating about it? Because of how young he was coming out of college, and because he didn't take the abuse that some of the other quarterbacks in that draft class took, he actually, I think, is the only quarterback left from that draft class that is still playing. And he has a Super Bowl ring being Tom Brady's backup. And he's probably going to get another one because he's Patrick Mahomes' backup. Just infuriating. Just an absolutely appalling, disgusting, atrocious, horrendous fucking human being. I fucking hate him. He's the person I hate the most for the Jaguars. And he is clearly the worst quarterback the Jacksonville Jaguars have ever had. Okay, at this point, go ahead and sound off in the comments. Who do you think was the worst? Who do you disagree with on the list? Go ahead, let me hear it all. But anyways, that's it. That's all, people. This was a long watch, so I thank you for that. But this has been your boy Jagging Off. Go Jags. Do all till the die. Come.